The metaphor that I like to think about is, if you remember your basic high school physics, when you move a metal wire through a magnetic field, it generates electrical charge. And this is actually what happens, metaphorically at least. The sociologist Emil Durkheim actually called it social electricity is generated by religion. But if we go with the electricity metaphor, then we can see that when people circle around anything, it doesn't have to be a religious object, it can be a flag. You get the same effect. If you circle around the flag, you trust each other, you can fight more effectively as a team. But if you're doing this circling and generating a charge, well, there's a positive charge and a negative charge, and that divides the world into two. Our side is perfectly good. Our side is the positive side. The other side is perfectly evil. They're the negative side. And when you apply this to society, it rips society apart. Here's an animation that I commissioned. I had some video artists create, showing what has happened in the United States over the last 40 years. This is our Congress. There used to be liberals and conservatives and moderates. They all knew each other. They could cooperate. They could combine in different ways to push bills together. But by the 1990s, they had all separated. There was no more overlap. We had very liberal congressmen, very conservative congressmen, and they don't like each other. They can't work together anymore. The same thing has happened. So that's why we get this rise. Or that's what's happening with this rise. The same thing is happening with the voters, with the people in the United States. People used to live near people who were different from them. But now Americans are increasingly segregating. The left, or the liberals, are generally along the Pacific Ocean and the Northeast and the Great Lakes, mostly along water. And the rest of the country is conservative. We don't know each other anymore. We separate. We've separated out. And that's why we get this increasing polarization of the people. The ancient psychology here is called Manichaeism. Manichaeism is an ancient religious movement from Persia, or the Persian area, that taught that the world is a battleground between the forces of good and the forces of evil. The other side is perfectly evil. The proper thing to do is kill them. Again, this is a very deep part of human psychology. Unfortunately, it comes out in our polarized politics. When you have polarization like this, you have Manichaean thinking, then when somebody on your team compromises or works with the opposition, they're worse than the enemy because they have betrayed your side. They're a traitor. You really hate them then. And that keeps everybody in line, and it makes it difficult to have democratic governance, which requires cooperation. So that's my story as to the psychology of our righteous minds and how it leads to political polarization. That's, I believe, how we get to this point. Various external and historical circumstances have activated our tribal minds much more in the last 20 or 30 years in the United States and in the last 12 years here in Korea. So what can we do? What can Korea do? Now, it's very, very complicated. As I told you, it's very complicated for America. The particular factors are very complicated for Korea. And I would not dare to give you advice as to how to change your politics or your government. So I figured, why don't I email Professor Lee and ask him for his advice? So I emailed Professor Lee, and he wrote back to me last night. He said the most critical thing is to promote the emergence of more moderate party leaders. So what are the conditions that would allow party leaders to be more moderate rather than more extreme? And Professor Lee listed a few electoral reforms, including what's called ranked choice voting, where you identify your first and second and third choice. This tends to help moderates win elections rather than the more extreme candidates. He suggested a more transparent and democratic candidate selection process. And he also said that the president and ruling party, whoever they are, whoever is in power, should make more efforts to improve dialogue and communications with the opposition party. And of course, it would help if the people are putting pressure on the leaders to do this rather than putting pressure on the leaders to not compromise. So this sounds like good advice to me. A second thought that I had is I think that there could be some changes to your education system. And so then, if you accept that, then I think you could consider including moral and political psychology in your school curriculum. What are your kids doing all day long? How much math do they need? Wouldn't it be better if they learned about politics and learned about what motivates liberals and conservatives and what each side is right about, let each side make its best case? Why not? Isn't this important to learn for democratic citizenship? Give the next generation the tools they need to govern themselves. And third, you can all change yourselves. There's a saying in English, I forget who first said it, be the change you seek. If you want to change something, start with yourself. Be more humble. Now that you understand the psychology of the righteous mind, you should be less certain that your side is right. This is one of the great truths across cultures. So, of course, Jesus said it in the Sermon on the Mount. How can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when all the time there is a plank in your own? We are all self-righteous hypocrites. It's not just Christianity, it's many religions. This is a quote from a Chinese Zen master. If you want the truth to stand clear before you, never be for or against. The struggle between for and against is the mind's worst disease. And of course, Buddhism is brilliant at identifying the self-righteousness, the anger, and how wrong we always are. Buddhism is brilliant at getting us to calm down, cool off, and open ourselves to others. So I was writing this talk yesterday, and I was thinking, how can I have an inspiring ending? Let me appeal to Korean sense of pride about their national greatness. Let me show the Korean flag. So I put up the Korean flag and I realized, oh my God, the Korean flag is the yin-yang symbol. This is at the heart of your idea of nationhood, is the reconciliation of opposites. The yin-yang symbol means that left and right are not enemies. Left and right are often complementary, like male and female, or night and day. Every democracy needs a progressive wing, a liberal wing, arguing for change, questioning things, trying out new ideas. But if that's all there is, they'll run off a cliff. So every democracy needs a conservative wing, saying, slow down. Don't throw out what works so quickly. Wait. Have some faith and some trust in our ancestors and in what we have inherited. Slow down. And democracy works best when those two are working as opposing principles, but in partnership. So in closing, I say to you something that you all already know, that Korea is a great nation. And as I learned from my father-in-law, Koreans can do anything that they set their mind to. Your parents and grandparents surmounted many hardships to build this nation. Your challenge, the challenge that they've bequeathed to you, is to tame your righteous minds, improve your democracy, and leave a stronger, better country for your children. Thank you.